Hey folks, Christy here with part two of my really fun interview with DFS hero Benny Ricciardi. We talk about so much in part two. We cover daily fantasy soccer strategy, we cover the family life balancing, how do you be a DFS pro while having three kids, etc., etc. We talk about similarities with poker, a subject very close to my heart, and there's just a ton of stuff covered. So before I completely bore you with this intro, let's just get straight into it. Part two, Benny Ricciardi. Let's go.
All right, so Benny, I know you're a family man. I know you've got a newborn who inflicted a brutal injury on you yesterday. First of all, if you explain the brutal injury, and then something that really interests me is finding that balance between living your life and being a good father and partner to your missus and everything, and at the same time being professional. Like, look, honey, I'm not accessible right now. I'm working, and not treating daily fantasy as a hobby if it's your primary means of income and expertise. How do you juggle that? How do you find that balance?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not always easy.
Yeah,
But a lot of it, the good thing about what I do and a lot of the, sites that I work for and the way that we do it is, I almost treat it like it's my 9 to 5 job.
yeah,
Where, while my wife's at work, except for the newborn, my kids are school age. So when they're at school during the day, I'm basically behind my computer doing my research, doing my writing, doing my, doing the videos that I need to get done and getting some lineups together for a little bit. The other good thing about it is, I can basically make my own hours by doing this. So I have
sure.
certain things I got to get done. So that actually fits pretty well within the day. This way, I work up until about 2:30, 3 o'clock, which is when the kids get out of school.
Yeah,
And then I'm there so they see my face. My wife works in the corporate world. She's a corporate executive, so she works 55, 60 hours a week sometimes.
wow,
So this way, I'm there for the kids. When the kids get out of school, I pick them up. They see daddy. I bring them home. I bring them to the park. I play with them. I do that stuff with them. My wife's usually home by about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we got till 7 o'clock over here is when lineups lock for most of the games.
sure.
So I'll have an outline of most of my stuff done, most of my rosters done. When she gets home, I'll hop on the computer, and she's great with it. She understands that, this is my job. There are times when she has to go out at night for, late night meetings and stuff like that where,
Yeah,
they're having a dinner or something like that. So she understands for me, before lineups lock, before 7 o'clock, that's basically work time for me. So I have an office off to the side of our house where, all the doors lock and I could be in, basically sealed off from all the craziness of 3 kids, 6 and under running around.
oh
And,
my,
I'll spend that hour getting everything squared away, everything sealed. 7 o'clock when lineups lock, I usually come back into the fold and join the family.
yeah,
Like I said, my oldest is 6, then I have a 4-year-old and we have the baby. So about 7:30 is usually bath time. I'll give them a bath. I'll get them into bed. Then I'll come back on the computer, check on, how my games are going, how everything is. I'll start doing some research that I need to get done for tomorrow. Basically, it's just like any other job. I do a lot of my work. I try to work around the family life aspect of it. Try to
yeah,
be with the kids when they get out of school up until dinner time. I eat dinner with them. It's a big thing for me that we eat dinner as a family every day.
sure.
So we eat dinner as a family every day, and then they get to hang out with mommy for an hour or two while daddy goes and sets his lineups for whatever games are going on that night. And then after that I come back, I do the dad thing. I give them a bath, I put them in bed, I make sure they brush their teeth, I do all that good stuff. So it's not as horrible. It is a lot of time, but like I said, I can work around. The good thing is my schedule is flexible, so I can work when I need to work, and then obviously for me, family is a very important thing. So,
Sure.
I'm able to spend time with my family, and most of the sites I work on are good with it too. If I tell them, hey, I'm taking the kids to the beach for the weekend, get somebody to cover me. Like I said, the community is very tight knit and everybody's got everybody's back. If you're home doing nothing this weekend and I'm going to the beach, you'll cover my articles next week. If you're going to Vegas for the weekend and,
Yeah,
you don't want to be writing stuff, I'll cover your articles if I'm home. So, you get a good group of guys that that have your back, and it makes it a lot easier if you have some stuff that comes up last minute.
Brilliant. And the injury.
Oh yeah, and the injury. Basically, as we were talking about before, so I have a newborn who's a month old. He's actually 5 weeks old today.
Wow.
So he's starting to get to that point where he's trying to pick his head up and then pick his arms up and moving around. So I'm laying on the couch and he's laying on my chest.
Yeah.
And he picked his head up, and he's still getting used to those muscles. So his head comes smashing down on my face and chips the front tooth that I have over here. So as I said to you, I got about another hour, and then I actually have a dentist appointment to get the half of my tooth that he just knocked out with his head put back in yesterday. So that was a fun time.
I swear I'm not laughing at your misfortune. I'm just laughing at the slapstick nature of it.
Yeah, like I said, you can't make this stuff up.
No, brilliant. Okay, one more thing. Sorry, I know that I'm really drilling down on what you've just said, but something that really interests me. When you lock your lineups, then you go have your family time. Are you then? You mentioned that you might check on the games. How keenly are you sweating the games once you've made your decision?
It depends on the sport, and it depends on the site. Some of the sites you can still change guys who haven't started playing up until the time their games start.
Yep.
Other sites, as soon as it locks, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that obviously is a big difference. But I'm a big sports guy. I mean, I watch an absolute obnoxious amount of sports anyway, even before I played daily fantasy and fantasy sports. So what I'll usually wind up doing, like I said, I'll take an hour or so out of my day, after lineups lock, to get the kids ready for bed and get them all squared away, get their lunch ready for tomorrow. Yeah. And then my wife goes to sleep early because she goes to work early in the morning as well. So basically at about 8:15, 8:30, I'm the only one awake in my house. So
I go into chaos to quiet.
Yeah, pretty much. So I go into my office. I have 2 or 3 little TVs in there, and then I have 2 or 3 computer screens at my desk. Also have an iPad on the side. So between like the MLB package and the NFL package, the NBA package, you could watch 4 or 5 games at one time. Brilliant. So I'll have a different game on all the TVs. Basically, most of the time I try to concentrate on if I started a pitcher on this team or if I started a couple guys playing on that team, I'll have that game on 1 or 2 of the screens. I think I'm somebody who's very visual, so I would rather watch the games and see how guys are doing, because when you look at the numbers, especially with like a sport like baseball, you could be 0 for 4, but you could have had 4 good shots where you hit the ball hard every time and just hit it right at somebody.
Yeah.
So if you're watching the game and you see that, wow, the guy had 4 good shots, even though he didn't get any hits out of it, if you're just looking at the box score, you're going to see 0 for 4 in the box score. You might think, oh, this guy's a bum. Yep. But meanwhile, if he hit the ball hard 4 times, you know that eventually the next game or the game afterwards, he's seeing the ball well, he's hitting the ball well. Those 4 hard shots are going to find an opening sometime, and you're going to wind up getting a couple hits out of them. So it gives you a little bit of a leg up if you're able to watch all the games. Same thing happens when you're talking about soccer. Different teams will have, different strategies that they're going about, and there'll be different times in the game where, a team might be pushing forward a little more, or they might be parking the bus and trying to play for that. And if you just look at the stats at the end of the game and you don't know how the game flow went, you're not going to be able to understand did these guys just have a bad game, or did this play into, the strategy that the coach was trying to employ to get them a win here, or, in the Champions League, sometimes they don't even need a win. They're just trying to get through to the next round. So, it lets you see things like that give you a leg up on other people who aren't watching the game. So I definitely think it's big if you're going to play these sports. I mean, a lot of the reason people play daily fantasy is because they love the sports anyway. Yeah. So if you're not watching them, I think it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage, to be honest.
That's really fascinating, because I am such a skeptic about the average person's ability to gain insight from what they see. I tend to believe, and you've made a very compelling case for the opposite, and of course it could be somewhere in the middle where a guy such as yourself, who clearly does have the insight, does then get extra benefit from it. But I always worry that your average person gets too has their opinion colored by the commentators, or by even visibility. For example, in soccer, you've got a particularly tricky winger who every time he gets the ball, it seems exciting, so he becomes more memorable to you.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that he's a great pick.
Oh yeah, and to be honest with you, that's probably the guy whose salary is, jacked up a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, that guy is probably not the guy that you want most of the time for for your daily fantasy rosters. That's probably not the way that you want to go about it, because especially if you're playing in a big tournament. I mean, we could have an entire hour-long conversation on game theory here.
Yeah.
But one of the big ideas about it, and as a poker guy, you kind of understand this a little bit as well. When you're playing in a big tournament, if you wanna be the guy who gets yourself to the top, you can't go all chalk. You can't just take the guys that everybody else is taking, because basically at that point it comes down to maybe one or two players on your roster that you have different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And there's always one of those big guys that you're expecting. There's always a game where Lionel Messi's going to go out there and not score a goal. There's not many of them, but there's going to be two games where it does happen. And if you happen to be on somebody else, because Messi's one of those guys who 60, 70, 80% owned in every tournament that he's in, because he is as good as he is. But again, if you're in that tournament that one time that he goes out there and doesn't have any goals, doesn't pick up an assist, and you have some of the cheaper options around him, you're going to be able to get the studs at every other position that guys couldn't fit because they paid up to get a Messi in their lineups. And you're going to be sitting pretty when when that does happen. And that's how you get your big scores. You don't usually get your big scores by taking all the chalk guys that everybody else has as well.
So when they zig, you zag, basically.
Yeah, basically that's it. I mean, you got to be able to think differently than everybody else, think outside the box. It's not, like I said, it's not going to work for you all the time. But again, you're not trying to make the money. When only 10% of the people get paid, you're not going to make the money every single time. Yeah. When you make the money, though, you want to make the money to a point where you're making significant money. You don't want to just get double what you put in there. You want 50, 80, 100 times what you put in there. And, taking the guys that other people don't have is the way that usually winds up getting done for you.
Perfect. I love it. And while we're on the selection strategy sort of tip, talk us through a little bit more about your soccer strategy. First of all, how did you get into daily fantasy soccer? How do you go through the lineups? What sort of stats are you looking out for, etc.?
Well, it's a little different. I know we were talking before the show. I know you guys have Mondo Goal over there is the big one. For us, DraftKings is the big one over here. Mondo Goal we do have as well, but I don't play over there as often, so I'm not as familiar with the scoring. But for a site like DraftKings, in case they do ever wind up getting that that gambling license and wind up being over on your side of the pond, the way the scoring is set up and the way the pricing is set up, it really skews to the point where you should be looking to pay up at defensemen if you can. Okay. You can get guys like basically the scoring system allows points for crosses, which is something that you're obviously only going to get from the outside backs. Yeah. So guys like a Leighton Baines, like a Kieran Trippier last year, those are guys that can really get you a big fantasy score. What a lot of people were doing is you get bonus points, on DraftKings, you get bonus points for clean sheets or for only allowing one goal if you're on defense. Sure. So a lot of people thought that the way to maximize your score was to take a goalkeeper and the defenseman on the same team as the goalkeeper, hoping you get the clean sheet and you get the max bonus from all three of those guys. Yeah. But, what the savvy players did and what they found out as the season went on is, if you can get a guy like Trippier who's giving you 10 or 12 crosses a game, well, if you're getting a point or 2 points for each one of those crosses, it doesn't matter if, Burnley gives up 3 goals in a game, because he's still getting you 12 to 15 points. And he's only a couple $100 more than the guy who, doesn't have 10 or 12 crosses in his game, but winds up getting a clean sheet for you. Yeah. So I was a big fan of paying up for your defenders when you're playing on DraftKings, because there's only so many guys, position scarcity. There's only so many guys that are going to be able to get you a double-digit score from your defense position. And if you can get a couple of those guys on your roster, and a guy like we've been talking about, some of these players, it doesn't make a difference if their team holds a clean sheet or not, because their scoring, their points, their fantasy value isn't completely tied to, their team being, holding the other team scoreless. So it doesn't matter if they're playing Man U, it doesn't matter if they're playing Man City, you can still put those guys in your lineup because they're still going to get you points. And when they do play one of the weaker teams, when they do play a Burnley or a Crystal Palace, they're going to get you those points, and they're going to get you the clean sheet points, and that's when you get a huge day out of them over there. But in order to do that, you're also going to have to find, you got to find some cheap options either in the midfield or up close at forward. Whenever you have a guy who's listed as a midfielder that, due to injuries, is playing up in the forward spot, he's like an automatic start for us on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get that goal scoring upside from a guy who's usually a little cheaper. And it also is basically like fitting in an extra forward into your roster, which, the forwards are really where you get all the points from. One thing that I did a lot that worked out pretty well for me is I never really paid up for the top price forward. Because the top price forwards are always so much more expensive than everybody else.
They are.
And again, they can score, they're going to score a lot of goals, but you really need those guys to have basically to get you like 2 goals and an assist or maybe 3 goals in order to reach the same value that you could get from some of the cheaper options who basically only need 1 goal to give you that same, 3 or 4 times their salary on a day. And, that's a good way to be able to afford the expensive defenders that you want and still have the same kind of upside on your roster. So that's basically the way that I had attacked it this year. It worked out pretty well for me.
Fantastic.
I think I finished the season in the top 10 ranks for soccer over here on DraftKings. So I was pretty happy.
Well played, sir. Yes, as it should be.
It was a profitable season.
Yeah, excellent. So we're talking about soccer in the UK. We touched upon the fact that DraftKings might be making an impact here. Just to fill the viewers in, okay, so DraftKings have applied for a UK gambling license, which may or may not happen. We don't really know. We just know that the request has been lodged, obviously with different legal implications on both sides of the pond. So over here, to involve yourself in DFS, you have to have the gambling license. I know in America, DFS is definitely not considered to be gambling. Do you see the sort of the geographical diversification being a key part of the growth of daily fantasy?
I think, to me, I think that the thing that has really helped daily fantasy grow is it is the one kind of legal place where, sports fans can put down some money on a game.
Yeah.
You can't, unless you're in Las Vegas over here, you really can't, bet on a game. Like we don't have what is it, Betfair over there?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big horse racing guy, so I know all about that and all about, all those guys. That's where my gambling life started, basically.
Okay.
So if you want to be able to play, on this side of the pond, I mean, daily fantasy is pretty much the only game in town right now, which is something that I think has really helped the growth of it.
Sure.
Again, like you said, it's it's a carve out from the UIGEA, which is the Uniform Internet Gaming Enforcement Act. The carve out was made for fantasy sports. It's basically considered a skill game, much like poker is as well. And like I said, the same guys win all the time. They're not the luckiest guys in the world. There is an element of skill to this.
No doubt.
There is a lot of research that goes into it. There's a lot of understanding how to build rosters, understanding how to use your money, how to use your bankroll to the best of your advantage. But again, I think that one of the things that's great about it is they're like, even now they're starting to do NASCAR. Car racing over here in the States for daily fantasy. And I mean, there's a big contingent of people that were there. When we were at the Fantasy Sports Trade Association, you saw some companies from over in Asia trying to get some daily fantasy cricket going, where cricket is, huge over there. I mean, I think that there's demand for daily fantasy sports around the world. I think the thing that you're going to find is there is demand for different sports around the world, though. Like I said, I love soccer. I play the daily fantasy soccer over here all the time. But soccer in America is nowhere near as big as, football, baseball, NBA basketball is. I think if you guys do wind up getting it on your side of the pond, I think that the explosion you guys are going to have in the soccer is going to be akin to what we had in our, American football.
Yeah.
Where, as we were talking about before, last year, the biggest prize pool out there was $100,000. And, we were spending 2 or 3 months playing in satellite tournaments, trying to get, buy-in tickets to play in this big $100,000 tournament. And, just this morning alone, I entered 6 or 7 tournaments with the $100,000 prize pool on, DraftKings alone for, $5 or $10 or $25. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of money that's on the table now and the growth that we've seen in this industry in just 12 months.
It's staggering, isn't it? Whether or not we see it over here, the same kind of numbers, I guess, may be contingent because, as you mentioned, in America, it's almost an open goal in that it's the only show in town.
Yep.
DFS. If you're interested in sports, if you're wanting to put some money down and benefit from your own expertise, over here, I mean, you're like you mentioned, you know, we have Betfair, we have Paddy Power, we have just Bet365 is enormous. You can't turn on the TV without seeing huge TV ads for these. So it's not just that daily fantasy is competing with season-long fantasy over here. I mean, it's you know, we have pretty much unrestricted poker over here as well. So it seems like there's a lot more competition. So although DraftKings will have fewer alternative sites, for example, FanDuel aren't at the moment present in the UK. It does seem like the biggest competition will come from out with the industry over here. It's really going to be very fascinating to see how it plays out. We're generally not as quantitative as you guys are. You guys always seem to be a year or two ahead of us in terms of strategies. I remember poker. It was all the US players that were really paving the way. We took all our cues from following your strategies, and so when the US players disappeared almost overnight, Black Friday, it really impacted quite heavily because not only were there fewer games available because there were fewer pros, there were also softer games.
Yes.
Because the US players were just that much stronger. I dare say that if and when it does become prevalent over here in the UK, you guys are going to benefit too, because there'll be an awful lot of soft money involved.
Well, it depends on the sport, because if you guys get soccer and the pools are mixed between us and you guys for a Premier League, I would venture to guess that you guys are going to have a leg up just being around and having your local newspaper have, I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It takes me a couple hours in the morning to find the right information and the right websites about who's injured, who's not playing, who's not in the lineup, whose wife was caught with somebody else in the papers and his head's
the answer is John Terry to all of those.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. You guys are going to have a leg up on us for it. Just like I'm sure, when it comes to, NFL football, we're going to have a leg up because during football season, in the States, I mean, you can't turn on a ESPN, a Fox Sports, a CBS, you can't turn on any of these sports shows without just being inundated with story after story about every possible little thing, football related. So, I think that depending on the sport, we'll definitely have some advantages in some places, but I think that, you're going to see a lot of UK and, European flags on the top of a lot of these soccer tournaments if they ever mix the pools together for us. So
we can only hope. Yeah, time will tell. Benny, I'm very conscious of your time. You have a dentist appointment to get to fix that too.
That's right. Unbelievable.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Really, really enjoyed having you on board, and I hope, obviously, I'm not going to hold you to anything, but if you would be so good as to come back for a little guest appearance when the soccer season starts.
Oh yeah,
we'll do
definitely.
Some more chatting.
Sometime in September. September is actually a pretty crazy month for us.
Of course.
We'll be wrapping up baseball and starting football at the same time.
Yeah.
I got to actually have a couple trips out to Las Vegas scheduled for September as well.
Sounds good.
Get out there and do some football betting. But yeah, at one of those weekends, if not, definitely at the beginning of October, once baseball's over and it dies down, I'd love to be back on by all means, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Benny Ricciardi, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, have a good one, guys. Be good.
Thank you.